My name is Nathan Bridgewater, and until that night, I thought I knew who I was. A simple man, a loyal son, the middle child in a family that barely got by but always stuck together. I was wrong. It happened on a Tuesday, the kind of gray, rainy day that already feels like an ending. My mother, Dorothy, was dying. 6 months of cancer had drained every ounce of strength from her, and we all knew her time was short. My brother Dennis stood by the hospital window, scrolling through his phone, and my sister Marlene sat in the corner, complaining about the parking fees. I was the only one sitting beside Mom's bed, holding her hand. Her skin was cold, her breath shallow, and then her eyes opened, sharp, almost terrified, like she had just woken from a nightmare. She squeezed my wrist and whispered, "Nathan, listen to me. You were never my child." At first I thought the morphine had made her delusional. I tried to calm her, but her grip tightened. "I took you," she said, her voice trembling. "I stole you from a millionaire family in 1985. Your real name is Christopher Rothwell. Your father owns half of Manhattan." For a second, the world stopped. The heart monitor beeped louder, faster. Dennis froze. Marlene stared at me like I'd just stolen her reflection. Then Mom's eyes rolled back, and the line went flat. Her last words weren't "I love you." They were a confession that shattered everything I thought I knew about myself, and that was just the beginning. The hospital room felt like a grave long after my mother was gone. The faint beeping of machines, the smell of disinfectant, and the weight of her final words hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't fade. Dennis was the first to break the silence. He stepped closer, his jaw tight, his voice sharp as a blade. What the hell was that supposed to mean? I couldn't answer. My head was spinning. My pulse hammered in my ears. I could still hear her voice. "You're not my son," Marlene scoffed from the corner. "She was on morphine, Nathan. Don't start making up stories now." But I saw it, the flicker of fear in her eyes, the way she avoided looking directly at me. They knew, or at least part of them did. I turned to Dennis, desperate for something. Anything that made sense. "Did you know about this?" He didn't respond, just crossed his arms and stared at the floor. That's when I noticed on the small hospital table beside my mother's bed, a single folded envelope with my name on it. My heart pounded as I reached for it. Dennis lunged forward, grabbing my wrist. "She's dead, Nathan. Whatever that is, it belongs to the family." "The family?" I snapped. "If what she said is true, I'm not even part of this family." His face twisted, a mix of guilt and anger. For a second, I thought he might hit me. Instead, he ripped the envelope from my hands, tore it open, and froze. Inside was a photograph of a man standing in front of a skyscraper with the name Rothwell Holdings written in gold letters. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, were 6 words that changed everything. "Forgive me. You'll understand soon enough." Dennis crumpled the photo and tossed it into the trash. "She was crazy," he said quickly, losing her mind at the end. "Don't let this nonsense mess you up," but I wasn't convinced. There was something in his voice, something he was trying to hide. That night, after we left the hospital, I drove home in silence. The rain came down hard, smearing the city lights into blurry streaks through the windshield. When I got to the house, I noticed something odd. My key didn't work. The locks had been changed. I knocked. No answer. I called Dennis, straight to voicemail. Then Marlene opened the door just a crack, her face cold and emotionless. "Dennis says you're not staying here anymore," she said flatly. "What?" "This is my home too," she corrected. "You heard, Mom. Maybe you should go find your real family." And with that, she slammed the door. I stood there in the rain, my mother's last words echoing in my head, the world collapsing beneath me. I had no one, no family, no place to go. I spent the next 3 nights at a cheap motel downtown, surviving on vending machine coffee and stale sandwiches. My mind wouldn't stop replaying that hospital scene. "You were never my child. I stole you from a millionaire family." It sounded insane, impossible. And yet, deep down, I felt it. There had always been a distance between me and them, a wall I could never climb, no matter how hard I tried. On the 4th morning, my world shifted again. As I stepped out of the motel lobby, a black car pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, and a man in a dark suit leaned out. "Mr. Bridgewater?" he asked, his accent faintly European. "Who's asking?" He reached into his coat and handed me a card. "Rothwell and Associates, Private Investigations." Then he said the words that froze me in place. "Your real father passed away 3 months ago, and he left you an inheritance worth $500 million. The world spun. I nearly dropped the card. But before I could speak, the man added, "Before you can claim it, Mr. Bridgewater, there's something you need to know. Something your mother took to her grave. For a long moment, I just stood there in the cold rain, staring at the black car and the man holding that card. Rothwell and Associates, the same name written on the building in the photograph my mother left behind. It couldn't be a coincidence. I followed the man into the car, every nerve in my body screaming that this was a mistake, but curiosity outweighed fear. As the city blurred past the tinted windows, he finally spoke. "My name is Victor Hale. I was hired by your biological father, Mr. Charles Rothwell, before he passed away. His instructions were very specific." "My father?" I asked, the word feeling strange on my tongue. "You're saying I really am?" "Yes," Victor interrupted calmly. "You are Christopher Rothwell, his only son." I felt the air leave my lungs. For 38 years, I had lived as Nathan Bridgewater, a factory worker's son, an ordinary man. Now, suddenly, I was the heir to a $500 million empire. Victor pulled out a leather folder and slid it toward me. Inside were documents. My original birth certificate, old family photos, even a hospital record showing a baby switch that had been quietly covered up in 1985. "Your mother, Dorothy," Victor continued, "was a nurse at St. Matthew's Hospital at the time. She had just lost her own baby to complications. Your father's newborn son was in the same ward that night. She took you." I stared at the papers, shaking my head in disbelief. "She kidnapped me." Victor nodded grimly. "The Rothwells searched for years, hired detectives, offered rewards. But Dorothy was clever. She changed her name, moved states, and buried every trace. Your father never stopped looking, though, until the day he died." I swallowed hard, my hands trembling as I looked at a faded photograph of a smiling man in a gray suit. Charles Rothwell, my real father. The resemblance was undeniable. Same eyes, same jawline. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. Victor's voice softened. "Your father's will left explicit instructions. His entire estate, including properties, businesses, and personal assets, are to go to you. But there's one condition." My stomach tightened. "Condition?" He hesitated. "You must return to the Rothwell estate, the place where it all began, and stay there for 1 week. There are people who need to see you. Things that must be explained." I leaned back in the seat, staring out the window. The rain had stopped, but everything inside me felt like a storm. "Why me?" I asked quietly. Why would he give everything to someone he never met? Victor turned to me, his expression unreadable. "Because you were his greatest regret, Mr. Rothwell, and his only blood." We drove for nearly 2 hours before the car finally turned off the highway and onto a long, winding road lined with iron gates. Ahead, through the fog, stood a mansion so large it looked more like a museum than a home. Stone columns, marble fountains, ivy-covered walls. It was the kind of place I'd only ever seen in magazines. "This is your home now," Victor said as the car stopped in front of the main entrance. Home. The word didn't fit. A butler opened the door and guided me inside. The smell of polished wood and old books filled the air. Portraits lined the hallways. Generations of Rothwells staring down at me with cold, aristocratic eyes. At the end of the corridor, an elderly woman appeared, elegant, composed, but her eyes were red from crying. "You look just like him," she whispered. "Like Charles. Who are you?" I asked. "I'm Eleanor Rothwell, your grandmother." Before I could say another word, she reached out and gripped my hand. "You have no idea what kind of danger you're in, Christopher." My heart skipped. "Danger? What are you talking about?" She glanced over her shoulder nervously, lowering her voice. "Your father didn't just leave you his fortune. He left you his enemies too." I froze. "What enemies?" Victor cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere private, ma'am." But Eleanor shook her head. "No, he deserves to know. The Rothwell Empire was built on more than business, Christopher. It was built on secrets, and someone will do anything to make sure those secrets die with you." I felt my chest tighten as the reality sank in. I had inherited a fortune, and a target on my back. The Rothwell mansion was unlike anything I had ever seen. Ceilings high enough to swallow my old apartment building. Hallways lined with portraits of ancestors whose eyes seemed to follow me wherever I went. Every step I took echoed through marble floors, as if the house itself were whispering secrets I wasn't supposed to hear. Eleanor guided me through the halls in silence. When we reached the grand staircase, she paused, her fingers brushing over the polished banister like she was touching a memory. "Your father spent his last days here," she said softly. "Even when his heart was failing, he refused to leave this place. He said he had unfinished business. With you." Her words made my stomach twist. "Business? What kind of business?" Instead of answering, she looked at Victor. "Show him." Victor nodded, leading me down a narrow corridor behind the main staircase. It was dimly lit, filled with the faint smell of dust and old cedar. He stopped in front of a panel in the wall that looked like plain wood, until he pressed a small, hidden button. The panel slid open, revealing a staircase spiraling downward into darkness. "What is this?" I asked. "The room your father built after your disappearance," Victor said. "He called it the archive. Only he and your grandmother knew it existed." We descended the steps. The deeper we went, the colder the air became. When we reached the bottom, I froze. The room was enormous, walls lined with filing cabinets, shelves full of photographs, documents, and old newspaper clippings. In the center stood a large wooden desk, and on it, a single object. A worn leather journal embossed with the initials CIR. My heart pounded. Charles Rothwell. Victor nodded. "Your father documented everything here. Every clue, every rumor, every lead he followed to find you. He never stopped looking, Christopher. Not even when everyone else gave up." I picked up the journal, running my fingers over the cracked leather. Inside were pages of handwritten notes, maps, dates, addresses, names I didn't recognize. Then a photograph slipped out. It was a baby, wrapped in a blue blanket. The back read, "Christopher, 1985. Tears burned in my eyes. For the first time it felt real, all of it. The wealth, the name, the lies. I had spent my entire life thinking I was unwanted, when in truth, someone had spent decades trying to bring me home. Eleanor stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Your father believed someone inside this family helped cover up your abduction. He never found out who." Before I could reply, the sound of footsteps echoed from above, fast, heavy, deliberate. Victor drew his gun instantly, motioning for silence. A door slammed somewhere upstairs, followed by glass shattering. Then, faintly, a woman's scream. "Stay here," Victor ordered, rushing up the stairs. But I didn't listen. I followed him, my pulse pounding so hard I could barely hear. We emerged into the main hall, and what I saw stopped me cold. The painting of my father, which had hung over the fireplace, was slashed down the middle. In its place, scrawled across the wall in red paint, were 6 chilling words: "Leave now or die like him." Eleanor gasped, clutching her chest. Victor swept the area quickly, but whoever had done it was gone. "Security footage?" I asked. He shook his head grimly. "Cameras were disabled. Whoever did this knew exactly how to avoid detection." I turned toward Eleanor, but she was pale, trembling. "It's starting again," she whispered. "Just like before, I repeated. "What do you mean?" She took a shaky breath. "The last time your father got close to the truth about your kidnapping. His car brakes failed the next day. The police said it was an accident, but he knew better." The room went still. Victor placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You need to understand something, Christopher. This isn't just about money or inheritance. Someone in this family has been hiding the truth for 38 years. And now that you're here, they'll do anything to make sure it stays buried." My pulse raced as I stared at the torn painting, the words on the wall burning into my mind. I had come here searching for my identity, but now I realized I was standing in the middle of a war I didn't understand. And the next move was mine. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the mansion felt like footsteps. Every shadow in the corners looked alive. The words painted across the wall, "Leave now, or die like him," wouldn't leave my head. Victor insisted I stay in the east wing, where security was tighter. But as I lay on the king-sized bed, surrounded by silk sheets that felt like someone else's life, all I could think about was my mother. Dorothy Bridgewater, or whatever her real name had been. The woman who raised me, lied to me, stole me. Just before dawn I sat up, unable to bear the silence. I pulled out my father's journal again, flipping through the pages until a small note fell out. A crumpled piece of stationery tucked between 2 pages marked 1985. The handwriting wasn't my father's. It was hers. My mother's. It read, "If he ever finds out, everything ends. The child must never know. Tell them he died and burn the rest." "The rest? Burn what?" I turned the paper over and noticed faint numbers written on the back. 1412, 12701. Coordinates. I looked at Victor during breakfast and slid the note across the table. "These numbers mean something." He studied them for a moment, his expression tightening. "That's Leipzig, Germany. The Rothwell estate used to have an overseas research facility there, closed in 1986, the year after my abduction." Eleanor's spoon clattered against her teacup. "No one's been there in decades. That place. It was shut down after your father's accident." "What kind of facility was it?" I asked. She hesitated. "Medical. Experimental, from what I recall. But your father never talked about it." Victor leaned closer. "If your mother left these coordinates, it means she knew something about that place. Maybe she was part of whatever happened there." The thought made my stomach twist. My mother, the woman who raised me, involved in some secret my biological father had been chasing? We agreed to go there. But before we could even make travel plans, something else happened. That afternoon, I went to the study, the same one where the slashed painting had been replaced with a tarp, and noticed something odd about the floor. One of the boards beneath the desk had faint scrape marks, like it had been moved recently. I knelt down, pried it open, and found a small tin box covered in dust. Inside was a folded letter sealed with wax. My name, Christopher Rothwell, was written across the front. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. The letter inside was dated September 3rd, 1985, the day after my supposed birth. If you are reading this, my son, it means the truth has finally found you. You were taken from this house by someone we trusted. Someone inside our family. I fear that the people behind your disappearance are still here, watching. I have spent years gathering proof, but every time I get close, something or someone stops me. If I do not survive, you must go to Leipzig. There you will find a vault, buried beneath the old research building. Inside is the evidence you'll need to understand who you really are, and why you were taken. Trust no one with my last name. My blood ran cold. Trust no one with my last name. I turned toward the doorway and froze. Eleanor was standing there, her face unreadable. What did you find? I quickly folded the letter. Nothing important. She smiled faintly, but her eyes told another story. Be careful, Christopher. Curiosity can be dangerous in this house. After she left, Victor entered quietly. She's been listening, he said. Every move you make, she knows. I handed him the letter. My father's words, they lead to Leipzig. We need to go. Victor nodded slowly. Then we leave tonight. Quietly. As I packed, I glanced at the letter again. The ink faded but clear. Trust no one with my last name. The Rothwell mansion, with all its grandeur and ghosts, was no longer a home. It was a trap. And by morning, I'd be gone, chasing the truth across an ocean. But what I didn't know then was that the moment I stepped out of that mansion, someone else had already started following me. The next morning, I sat in the lawyer's office, staring at the mahogany table between us. My mind was spinning from everything that had happened. My mother's confession, my siblings' betrayal, and now this mysterious inheritance from a man I had never met. Mr. Holloway, my supposed biological father's attorney, was a tall, quiet man with silver hair and eyes that studied you like an X-ray. He slid a thick file toward me, the Rothwell estate documents. My pulse quickened as I saw the embossed gold seal on the cover. Before we proceed, he said in a low, measured tone, you need to understand something, Mr. Bridgewater, or rather, Mr. Rothwell. Hearing that name out loud felt strange, almost foreign, like he was speaking about someone else entirely. Your father, Leonard Rothwell, was one of the most powerful men in New York real estate, Holloway continued. He owned hundreds of properties, major shares in media and automotive companies, a true empire. But when his son vanished in 1985, everything changed. He never stopped looking for you. I leaned forward, heart pounding. You're saying he knew I was alive? Yes, the lawyer said. He spent millions on private investigators. We had leads, dozens of them, but they always went cold. Until 3 months ago, when your mother's medical records resurfaced in a private clinic in Cleveland. That's when the truth started to unravel. He opened the file, revealing old photographs, a baby wrapped in a hospital blanket, a birth certificate, and an official report stamped confidential. That's you, he said softly. Born Christopher Leonard Rothwell, kidnapped from your father's estate during a power outage. The nurse on duty disappeared that same night. My stomach turned. You're saying my mother, Dorothy, Yes, Holloway interrupted gently. Dorothy Bridgewater was that nurse. The room went still. My throat closed up as the truth hit like a freight train. My entire life, every memory, every moment was built on someone else's crime. I pushed my chair back, running a hand over my face. Why now? Why tell me all this now? Holloway slid another envelope across the table. Because your father died 2 weeks ago. His will left you everything, the estate, the businesses, the trust fund, totaling just over $500 million. I froze. The number sounded unreal, like it belonged in someone else's world. But, Holloway continued, there's a problem. Your siblings, Dennis and Marlene, have filed an injunction claiming you're not the real heir. They've presented altered DNA documents and are trying to block your inheritance. I slammed my hand on the table. Of course they are. They never cared about the truth, just the money. He nodded. I suspected as much. That's why your father left behind one final piece of evidence, something only you can unlock. My eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Holloway leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper. A sealed letter and a recording. They're stored in a safe deposit box at Rothwell Tower, under your father's personal code. But here's the catch. The code is hidden in his final journal, which disappeared the day he died. A chill ran through me. So someone stole it. Exactly, Holloway said grimly. And if I had to guess, the same people who don't want you to claim what's rightfully yours. I stood slowly, my pulse racing with a mix of fear and determination. For the first time in my life, I knew who I was, and now I had to fight for it. Where do I start? I asked. Holloway handed me a business card. There's one person who might know where the journal went. Your father's former assistant, Claire Mendel. She disappeared right after his death. Find her, and you'll find the truth. I looked down at the address on the card, feeling the weight of destiny pressing on my shoulders. This wasn't just about inheritance anymore. This was about uncovering who I really was and what my mother had stolen from me all those years ago. That night, I couldn't sleep. The city outside my window buzzed with life, taxis, rain, sirens, but all I could hear were my mother's final words echoing in my head. I stole you from a millionaire family. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, pale, trembling, desperate. But now, I had another name haunting me too. Claire Mendel, my father's missing assistant, the only person who might hold the key to his final journal, and to everything I'd lost. By morning, I was standing in front of a sleek glass building in downtown Manhattan, Rothwell Tower. It felt surreal, knowing that my blood, my name, was tied to this empire. The revolving doors opened automatically, almost like they recognized me. I walked to the reception desk. I'm looking for someone named Claire Mendel. She used to work for Leonard Rothwell. The receptionist's polite smile faltered for a second, just a flicker, but enough to tell me something was off. I'm sorry, sir, she said. Ms. Mendel no longer works here. I know, I said, leaning in slightly, but I think you know where she went. Her eyes darted toward the hallway before she whispered, try the old Midtown office. She left a few things behind there after Mr. Rothwell passed. 15 minutes later, I was in a cab heading across town. My heart pounded harder with every block we passed. When I reached the old building, I found it abandoned, windows boarded, dust coating the doorknob. But when I pushed the door open, the faint smell of perfume lingered in the air. Someone had been here recently. I searched the office, moving through rows of dusty filing cabinets and overturned chairs. Papers were scattered across the floor. Financial reports, property deeds, legal notices. Then, behind a fallen bookshelf, I saw something glinting under the light. A silver flash drive. It had one word engraved on it. I plugged it into my laptop, praying it wasn't corrupted. A single video file appeared, dated just 2 days before my father's death. The screen flickered to life. My father appeared, sitting behind his oak desk, looking weak but determined. His voice was gravelly but clear. If you're watching this, he said, then you found what they didn't want you to see. The truth about your mother, about Claire, about my death. My chest tightened. My death? He continued. Claire knows the details. She was there that night. I trusted her with my most valuable possession, my journal. Inside it lies the real story of what happened in 1985. But if you're hearing this now, then I'm already gone. And if my son ever finds this message, I want him to know I never stopped looking for him. Christopher, you were stolen from me, but they can't steal the truth forever. The video ended abruptly, replaced by static. My hands trembled as I ejected the drive. I needed to find Claire, and fast. But as I turned toward the exit, the door suddenly creaked open. A man in a dark trench coat stepped inside. His eyes were cold, calculating. Looking for something, Mr. Rothwell? He asked. I froze. Who are you? He smirked. A friend of your family. They wanted me to deliver a message. Before I could react, he tossed a small envelope onto the floor and walked out. Inside the envelope was a single note written in messy handwriting. Stop digging, or you'll end up like him. My blood ran cold. They knew I was searching, and now they were watching. I picked up the flash drive, clutching it tight. Fear battled with anger inside me. Whoever they were, my siblings, their lawyers, or someone even higher, they had gone too far. I wasn't just uncovering a family secret anymore. I was stepping into a war for truth, one that had already claimed one life. And I had a feeling, mine might be next if I wasn't careful. I barely slept that night. The note, stop digging or you'll end up like him, replayed in my mind over and over. It wasn't just a warning. It was a threat. Someone out there didn't just want the truth buried. They were willing to bury me with it. The next morning, I packed my few things into a backpack and took the earliest train out of Manhattan. My instincts told me to find Claire Mendel, the missing assistant my father had trusted. The flash drive had mentioned her by name, and she was the last person who might have seen him alive. After hours of calling every contact I could find, I tracked down an old address in Poughkeepsie, 2 hours north of the city. The house was small, hidden behind a wall of oak trees. The blinds were drawn tight. I knocked once. No answer. Twice. Still nothing. Finally, I said through the door, "Claire, my name is Nathan. Leonard Rothwell was my father." The door creaked open an inch. A woman in her late 50s stared back at me. Her eyes were tired, haunted. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "They're still watching." "I don't care," I said. "He left me a message. He said you had something, his journal." Her expression shifted. The fear in her eyes replaced with something else, guilt. "Come in," she said, finally opening the door. Inside, the living room looked frozen in time, newspapers stacked, photos on the walls, a faint smell of old coffee. She motioned for me to sit while she rummaged through a cabinet. When she returned, she held a small leather-bound journal, its edges cracked and pages yellowed. "Your father gave this to me the night before he died," she said. "He told me if anything happened to him, I was to make sure you got it. But when I heard about his death, and how your family reacted, I got scared. I opened the journal carefully. My father's handwriting filled every page, notes, sketches, names, and dates. One entry stood out, written just 3 days before his death, Dorothy Bridgewater, paid off to keep silent. The boy's real name is Christopher Rothwell. They took him when he was 2. If something happens to me, it won't be an accident." My breath caught. Paid off? My mother. She hadn't just stolen me, she'd been part of something far darker. "Claire," I said quietly. "Did he tell you who paid her?" She hesitated. "Your uncle, Martin Rothwell. He wanted the company. When Leonard refused to sell his shares, Martin found another way, by taking away his only heir." I sat in stunned silence. My own uncle had orchestrated the entire thing, stealing me from my father to secure control of a billion-dollar empire. Claire reached across the table, her voice trembling. "There's something else you need to know. The night your father died, he called me. He said Martin had come to see him. He was scared, said he was being followed. I told him to call the police. He said he couldn't, because he didn't know who to trust anymore." Tears welled in my eyes, and then, the next morning he was gone. They said heart failure, but I've never believed that. Outside, headlights flashed through the window. Claire froze. "They found you," she whispered. I turned to the window. 2 black cars parked across the street, engines still running. "Take the journal," she said urgently, shoving it into my hands. "Go out the back. There's a path through the woods. Don't stop until you reach the river. Come with me," I pleaded. She shook her head. "They already know where I am. You're the one who can still make this right." Before I could argue, she pushed me toward the back door. I ran, branches whipping my face, heart pounding like a war drum. Behind me, I heard tires screech, doors slam, and then a single, distant gunshot. I didn't look back. For the second time in my life, I was running for the truth, but this time, I knew exactly what it was worth. By the time I reached the city again, dawn was breaking. My clothes were soaked from the river, my shoes heavy with mud, and my heart pounded with the rhythm of fear and fury. I clutched my father's journal to my chest like it was the only thing keeping me alive, because in a way, it was. Claire's final words echoed in my head. "Your uncle did this. He took everything. Now I had proof, dates, signatures, transactions. Enough to destroy Martin Rothwell, the man who'd spent decades pretending to mourn his brother while secretly stealing his son." I made my way straight to Rothwell Tower, the gleaming skyscraper that bore my stolen name. Security guards moved to stop me, but when I held up the journal and said, "Tell him it's about Leonard's will," one of them hesitated, then made a call. 10 minutes later, I was standing in Martin Rothwell's penthouse office. He was older than the pictures I'd seen, silver hair, sharp suit, eyes cold enough to freeze fire. Behind him, the skyline of Manhattan glowed like a kingdom he believed he'd built himself. "Nathan Bridgewater," he said with a faint smirk. "Or should I say, Christopher Rothwell. I was wondering when you'd come knocking." I dropped the journal on his desk. "You knew," I said. "You knew all along who I was." He didn't deny it. He simply leaned back, folding his hands. "Of course I did. But you were supposed to stay hidden. You were a problem that didn't need solving until your mother got sentimental on her deathbed." My stomach twisted. "You had her paid off. You let her raise me in poverty while you took everything from my father. His eyes hardened. Your father was a fool. He built an empire, but he couldn't protect it. When he refused to merge the company, he put everything at risk, including you. I simply ensured stability. I slammed my fist on the desk. You killed him. He didn't flinch. A heart failure, he said smoothly. That's what the reports say. And you, of all people, should know. Money writes the truth. My pulse thundered in my ears. I have proof. The journal, the flash drive, the bank transfers, it's all here. I'll take it to the press, the police. He laughed, low and cruel. And what then? You think anyone will believe a janitor from Cleveland over me? The board, the government, they all owe me favors. You'd disappear before your story ever made it to print. For a moment, I almost believed him. The power in that room was suffocating, decades of corruption, built into the marble floor and the glass walls. But then I remembered Claire's face, her trembling hands as she gave me the journal, and the way she told me to run. I took a deep breath. You're wrong, because I've already sent copies of everything to multiple reporters. If anything happens to me, they'll go public. That got his attention. The smirk vanished. His jaw clenched. You've made a mistake, boy, he hissed. You think you're exposing me? You're destroying your family's legacy. I'm not destroying it, I said quietly. I'm reclaiming it. He stared at me, a flicker of something, maybe fear, crossing his face for the first time. Then, in a cold, measured voice, he said, Get out of my building. I turned to leave, but stopped at the door. You said money writes the truth, I said. But not this time. This time, truth writes itself. I left the tower with my heart pounding, but my steps steady. Outside, the morning light hit the city like a promise. My phone buzzed, an email from the New York Ledger, confirming receipt of the documents. We'll publish at noon, it read. I looked up at the skyscraper that had stolen my father's name and whispered, It's over. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Because the truth might have set me free, but it was about to tear the entire Rothwell empire apart. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to face whatever came next. The article broke the internet within hours. Billionaire empire built on stolen identity, the headline screamed. My father's name, Leonard Rothwell, was finally cleared. His legacy restored. My Uncle Martin's empire crumbled overnight. The board forced him out. The authorities began investigations, and his carefully crafted reputation fell apart like paper in the rain. But as justice echoed across Manhattan, I didn't feel triumph, only peace. For years I'd lived believing I was no one. Now I finally knew who I was, and who I wasn't. I stood before my father's grave on a crisp autumn morning, holding the same journal that had saved me. The wind carried the scent of fallen leaves and rain. You found me, I whispered. Even from the grave, you found me. Not long after, the lawyers contacted me. The estate transfer was complete. Every property, every asset, every company share now under my name. Christopher Rothwell. The number was staggering, $500 million. But all I could think about was how much pain and truth had been buried beneath it. Instead of moving into the mansion, I turned it into a foundation, the Bridgewater Trust, named after the only name I'd ever known. It would fund scholarships for foster kids and shelters for the homeless, people like the one I once was. As I stood on the balcony of the newly restored Rothwell Tower, looking over the city lights, I realized something. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my father's dream, reborn through me. For the first time, the name Rothwell didn't feel stolen or tainted. It felt earned. And this time, it finally belonged to the right person.